morning and welcome to PT Live. I'm your host, Monica Zielinski. Co-working spaces are on the rise and more foreign companies are looking to rent in Poland. Today's guest is Piotr Grabowski, Business Development and Partnerships Manager at HubHub. Thank you, Piotr, for coming today.
Hello.
So today we're going to be talking about co-working spaces, and it's one of my favorite topics in terms of real estate because it's so popular right now. So to get started, I wanted to ask, what is co-working etiquette? Because you have people maybe coming from traditional office space or working from home, and now they're in this community environment. So how do you get used to this new kind of space, and with these new people that you maybe don't work with on a day-to-day basis? How do you suggest people adapt to that?
So basically it comes very naturally because people come from different areas, from different companies, and when you are after a week in a co-working space, you're basically feeling the spirit. So you're very open, you treat everyone as your friend basically, you'll say hello, nothing official and so on. So it's very easy because people tend to be like treating people as friends. So sometimes in the big corporations, of course, you have to be a pretty formal, especially towards your business partners. And the co-working is completely different because we are all on the same ship. And I think that's one very good thing in a co-working, that people can feel totally like both chilled and professional because they feel after some time in a co-working space, they basically feel like home.
Okay, great. So what is this trend in Poland with co-working? When did it start? What does it look like now?
So basically it started around like 2010 probably. As far as I remember, there was a co-working space opened by regional community in Wrocław. And then slowly it was rising, but everything started around truly around 2015. And until the year of 2017, there were 20,000 square meters of co-working spaces here in Warsaw. Then the next 20,000 square meters opened just in 2018. And then last year, 2019, it was 50,000 square meters. So basically It's growing, and we are not seeing the end of it.
Wow, and now I wanted to ask about the international companies that I think are beginning to come to Poland. So what are they looking for? What are their needs?
So when international companies coming to Poland, they usually kickstart a headquarters, like small regional brands, or sometimes it's headquarters, but usually they are starting from something small. So sometimes it's like 10 people, sometimes it's 50 people, but it's usually not enough to get into the traditional lease because they don't know how fast the company will be growing. It really depends on the market, how they will perform on that market. So it's hard to forecast how much space they will need in upcoming time. And that's the place where the co-working spaces come in, because you can be very flexible about the amount of desks you are having. And that's the main advantage for international companies. So for this period, which is like, okay, we're setting up a branch and we need some time to figure the things out, the numbers, the needs, the team we need. Co-working is a perfect space for kickstarting, and we see more and more international companies choosing co-work as their first proper office in Poland. And then usually we see that after 2-3 years, sometimes faster, sometimes slower, but they move into the traditional lease when the branch in the country is set up.
I wanted to actually ask, can you explain the difference between a typical lease and a co-working? What are the differences?
So typical lease is usually like 3 to 5 years, sometimes even more. But you need to make that commitment. You need to sign the papers that you need that much space. You need 1,000 meters for 5 years. And that's difficult because if you're starting small, but you know you're gonna need like 1,000 meters or like 10,000 meters in the upcoming, 2-3 years, you need to pay for the whole space from the very beginning. So, and in the co-working space, you can basically, most of the agreements, like in our space, most of agreements are like month-to-month basis. Many co-working spaces also offer like 6 months agreements, 12 months agreements, but it's much shorter period. And you can actually, sometimes get more space. Sometimes you can just shrink what you have if the project you end the project and you don't need so much people. So this is one thing, and the second thing is basically like the community. So in your own office, you are usually in a traditional lease. You are just your company and a few companies in the same building, but you don't have so many interactions. And a co-working, full mix of people, many industries, many cultures, many behaviors, many cities. that's amazing. Like this multicultural mix of the people in a co-working space, different areas. You can get very different perspective. One time you take someone running media agency, the next hour you're talking to someone standing by the coffee machine about, I don't know, the yoga retreats the person's organizing, for example.
Right, I wanted to ask, because obviously co-working is not for every single industry, but what kind of businesses should consider this as a main type of office?
So for sure, this is for those companies, for growing businesses. So as I mentioned before, for those who cannot forecast the number of the people, and this is mostly the characteristics of tech companies. So they're growing very fast. Sometimes the financing round ends, for example, and you need to get to resign from few part of your team, and that's very unpleasant moment when you have to say bye to some people. But it happens in tech companies. Yeah, they're growing like crazy, then they're shrinking. So this is the key factor. So the main need of such a company is flexibility, and this is characteristic of tech companies. And more often it happens to corporations because they're running projects. Very often we see much more customers from the area that the big corporation is running, have their own office here, even in Warsaw, but they are looking for additional space because they have a specific project starting for a new customer, and it's like, I know, 6-month projects, 12-month project, and they need to hire additional people and make them work somewhere. We have one company like that, a big corporation in HubHub, and that's other need companies trying to fulfill going to co-working spaces.
Interesting. And what about the requests that these companies have, both international and Polish companies? Do you ever get really strange requests for their space? Do they have specific needs that you have to fulfill?
There's a bunch of standard. So I would say that the main thing the people are looking for is convenience, I would say.
Right.
So I have a very honest talk with one IT company just at the beginnings of HubHub. The CEO of the company, he wanted the office for 10 people, and I asked him, why you decided for co-working space? I said, I'm running IT company. My developers have to code, my sales guys have to sell, and I want to give them the best possible environment for that. I don't want to deal with ordering coffee. I don't want to deal with cleaning and so on. I want to have these people to focus on work, have a great environment to work in, but I don't want to deal with all the mess. So this convenience is very important thing. But about this strange request, I wouldn't say they're strange requests. But what's happened recently in HubHub is that we have more and more dogs in the space.
Really?
I was just scrolling my Instagram, and I saw that one of our community managers put a photo that today there are 3 dogs in a space.
Wow, that must be really hard to work. I love dogs, so I would just want to play with the dogs.
Yeah. And I had a talk yesterday with our members about the dogs as well. Yeah. That if they were to change their job place, the place they will work, basically, they would like to choose another company of HubHub. And the one reason for that is that we have so much dogs, and they are really, distressing people when people have a bad day or something when you have a dog around. So we're a very dog-friendly place. So I would say if it's a request, it's getting a standard, and I think that in the co-working spaces we are trying to, you cannot let people to get on your head and request too much. And even some people who are problematic, we need some super extra tech stuff just for hours, but maybe you can buy it as a co-working space. Guys, we need to balance something. Yeah? Right. Sometimes there are things that when something is requested by many people, we're happy to introduce that we're very towards people. But sometimes, if it's just for one company, it doesn't make sense.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're very accommodating. That's definitely a plus. I don't think you get that at many office spaces, so I think that's a big benefit to being in a co-working space like HubHub. So thank you so much, Piotr, for this really insightful and interesting conversation. I think we could go on and on, but we ran out of time. But thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much.